ain't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, the Blur Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, so today's video, we're gonna be talking about Black Lightning number 4. And this is the issue, like, following up from last time around. We saw that Jefferson Pierce, AKA Black Lightning, had gotten some choice words from the Justice League, specifically the Trinity, in regards to how his daughter Anissa was or was not controlling her powers in a roundabout way, seeming like they were trying to tell Black Lightning how to parent his child. And as it turns out, this issue, well, it's all water under the bridge. It was one of those situations where I will say I haven't had very many, I think if any, actual criticisms of this book. This might be one of the first. I actually think that Jefferson should have put more hands on the Trinity. Not to say that, you know, it should have been like a whole like issues worth of a fight, but I kind of wish it would have went a little bit further than what it did. But it almost, I'm not gonna lie, it felt like it kind of diminished Black Lightning a little bit, because, you know, he threw his hands, but he didn't really, you know, find any purchase at any point, and I didn't really like that. I took that personally. Come on, Brandon. Come on. You could have let him get like 2 or 3 licks in. Come on. Now we're making Black Lightning look like a chump. But it's okay though, because you know what? It's actually okay. I'm gonna let it slide, because at least in this we do get to see Black Lightning kind of find his footing in his relationship with Anissa. He's worried that his relationship with Anissa is damaged by what has happened. And to the credit of the League, they seem less like assholes in this issue versus the previous one, which, if I didn't know any better, I would have thought that there was an issue in between 3 and 4 that we just did not get. But that's not the case. It's just everything happens fast here. So we end up in this situation where the League actually understands a little bit more about how Jefferson feels than maybe what might have been presented in the previous issue. We get to this point and it's like, okay, cool. It's all done. Water under the bridge. Everyone kind of goes their separate ways. And while Jefferson doesn't necessarily get to directly interact with Anissa, at least like right away, we do kind of get to see that, well, yes, there's been a lot of emotion. There have been a lot of hot-headed stuff happening back and forth. Ultimately, everything's fine for the most part. And we still really haven't gotten any word back on Grace Choi. Like, it's been kind of implied that something happened to Grace during the events of Absolute Power that I don't think has up to this point been depicted. I read pretty much every Absolute Power tie-in. There was nothing really going on there. And obviously Black Lightning has not had his own book up until recently, so clearly nothing's been shown there either. But I'm hoping we get some answers about that here before too long. And I think what actually is even, I would say, more of note personally, is how the whole meta situation is going down here. Talked about in the previous video in regards to the new talking head that's been making the rounds. One of the main reasons why we kind of knew what was going to be going on with the Power Company leading into this, we saw that Josiah Power had made his return in the previous issue, but we also saw the introduction, or rather reintroduction, of Jay Harriman, a character who when I talked about in the previous issue, I'm still trying to figure out this whole situation, like whether or not this guy is like a son of one of the other characters or what. But the original Jay Harriman, like in like New Earth continuity, was a white dude. Here he's black. I don't know what's going on here, but hey, like I said, we're riding with it. That said, going into that, we're learning more about the connections. There were hints and teases that the Sons of Liberty were going to make their return. For those that are unfamiliar, I talked about this in the previous video, so I'll try to remember to have it linked up here somewhere. But ultimately what you need to know is that the Sons of Liberty were basically run by Jay Harriman and another individual, an actual black person in the original New Earth continuity. But all of that aside, the Sons of Liberty were basically going after Superman. And that was their stock in trade for the most part. They were what you would probably imagine based on their name. They were people who were dissidents. They didn't like the way that the country was going and felt that they were being left behind. Honestly, the Sons of Liberty, what they stood for actually hits a little bit in terms of today's political and social economic commentary, because truth be told, all they really were some Proud Boys. That's really what they were. They were basically the Proud Boys before the Proud Boys, or whatever you want to call them. That's kind of what they are here too. And they're not taken, like, for being what they are, they're actually not being taken very seriously in this. I mean, yes, they are a threat, they are a problem, but I mean, they aren't a problem that can't be handled, is probably the better way I should have put that. Probably the biggest difference with the Sons of Liberty here is that instead of focusing on trying to overthrow the United States government, here it seems like they're more interested in trying to tamp down on metahumans. And in the wake of absolute power, metahumans are popping up everywhere. Yes, the metahumans who lost their powers, most of them have gotten them back. Some people have gotten powers that they did not have before. Case in point, Anissa. Anissa did not have electricity-based powers before. Originally, her powers were her ability to control her mass and her density, and that was how she was always able to appear as though she was superhumanly invulnerable. And she also possessed superhuman strength, and she would often use that same super strength to do what was effectively Hulk-like thunderclaps and thunder stomps, the types of things you usually would associate with a super strong character. But now that's changed. She doesn't have those powers anymore. She has powers that actually make her a lot more the way that lightning used to be back in like I would say like the early aughts. That's just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on here, but that's what the Sons of Liberty are more focused on. They're focused on trying to stop metahumans from replacing them. The way that, the people in Charlottesville marched and said the Jews will not replace us. That's basically what the Sons of Liberty are doing. They're saying the metas will not replace us. I think if the commentary is lost on you, then I would really advise go to a hospital, get yourself checked out. Your brain is dead. That said, it becomes this situation where we know that Harriman is gonna become more involved in the shenanigans, and we also know that the Masters of Disaster who showed up in the past couple of issues, they're involved somehow, but we don't really know the full extent of it. We know that the Masters of Disaster ran off with Isaac from the previous issue, and we see that he's back and he's alive and well and everything seems to be fine. But it seems like the Masters of Disaster have ulterior motives going on, and while we don't necessarily figure out exactly what those are, it is hinted and implied that maybe there is some connection somewhere in there between Harriman, the Sons of Liberty, and the Masters of Disaster. But that's when things get kind of weird, because while it does seem like Volcana of the Masters of Disaster seem to try to be playing both sides against the middle, she doesn't seem to be terribly impressed with how the Justice League are handling the metahuman situation, which, to be fair, they could always be doing something better. I guess what Volcana feels is that the Justice League is putting a band-aid on the situation and not actually trying to help people, which is kind of weird considering that over the course of the Justice League Unlimited book, we've actually seen the Justice League actively try to help people who are discovering that they have powers. And we have seen in this series that Black Lightning has directly tried to help Isaac figure out his powers. But I'm just gonna put it like this. I feel like Volcana is trying to be the Magneto of the situation. That's what I feel like. I feel like she's trying to have a little Sister Soldier moment, and it that may be genuine, it may not be genuine. And we know that Harriman doesn't seem to care for metahumans at all, but the way it's all kind of working out, if there is some greater connection between the two, then yeah, this is Harriman playing 5D chess to get the Masters of Disaster just make more trouble while he gets to play off of it in the political arena. But regardless of all that, it all gets weird when Windfall shows up. And what I find noteworthy is that when she arrives on the scene, the scans say that Windfall is not a meta, which we know is not true. She is a meta. As her name would imply, she can control wind. But when she shows up on the scene, she's damn near dead, and she is said to not possess any metahuman powers. It's safe to say the Sons of Liberty have power dampening tech, which is why in this issue, there is no lightning or electricity of any type being shot at the Sons of Liberty. The device that was used that sends a shockwave that sends both Black Lightning and Lightning herself on, their asses, that temporarily knocked their powers out. Hence why they're both having to use mundane weapons to fight back against the Sons of Liberty, which I feel like is also a way to kind of put a little more respect on the Pierce family's name, that they're not just the powers that they possess, which I think is really important, because I feel like that is something that gets lost in translation a lot of times. A lot of times people think that characters are just their power. Case in point, people would look at a character like a Black Lightning and say, oh, well, without his electricity powers, what is he? But clearly he's out here, on some JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, BS, basically doing the, like he's doing this shit. So, I mean, clearly the guy's got hands. He even says as much that he's from the slum, the suicide slum, if you will. What they used to call Little Africa back in the day, but thankfully we don't call it that anymore. But yeah, Jefferson's out here. He's got the powers. He doesn't need the powers to put hands on these guys, and he's doing exactly that. So too is Jennifer. So I think by the time we get to issue 5, I think we'll find a little bit more about what's going on with Harriman's connection to the Masters of Disaster and what Windfall's play is in this, and also maybe get to see what Isaac is going to ultimately do, because he clearly knows there's something not right and he recognizes it. So I'm curious to see what's going to come out of this. But I do like the idea of something that comes up earlier in this issue, that the power dampening collars don't actually work. Windfall, she says, hey, I took your power dampening collar off and you've been fine. Like, now granted, he was knocked smooth out, so that might have had more to do with it than the power dampening collar. But the fact that you not having control of your powers, it's all in your head. And I think that's something that is also gonna eventually end up helping Anissa out. This might be some words that come back, almost like kind of like a Chekhov's sentence, if you will. This is gonna be a sentence that comes back and maybe applies to Anissa later. That you don't need the power dampening collar, you're going to be fine. Which, to be fair, we see early in the issue, she's learning how to hone her new powers a lot better. She's got her new super suit, and I think that all kind of rings true. I think it's just something that's in her head. I think that she's gonna have her moment of truth, because once again, this has been all in a practice phase. I think we get to issue 5, I think we're actually gonna get to see her use these abilities, because once again, she's gonna see that her father and sister are in danger. She was watching them through the old lenses that Lightning used to wear. When that device went out and knocked their powers out, it also knocked out the lenses. So I'm pretty sure she's going to show up and she's going to have her moment of truth. She's going to get to stand 10 toes down on business and show that she is the hero she has always been. And I actually look forward to seeing how Anissa is going to work her powers in such a way that kind of stay in touch with her original moniker. She's gonna be able to affect her old powers as well and use the new set. Remains to be seen.